Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome, my dear student. I am Khujista Naurin Liza, lecturer English, Anandabhan College, Singh. Today's class is for honors first year English. That is our subject, and today's topic is poetry. You know, we have started our novel, that is Silas Marner, but I have taken 3 classes of Silas Marner. I wish I will take another 2 or 3 classes on Silas Marner, but today we will start our new topic, that is poetry. That is, our poetry is Elegy written in country churchyard by Thomas. At first, lesson outcome. Learners will be able to say about the poet after doing this class, and I wish our learners will be able to explain the word meaning of the poetry, and I wish they can also explain historical background of the poetry, and they can write the summary of 4 stanza at least of this poetry, because I wish we will cover the first 4 stanza of this poetry today. Before starting the poetry, I wish my students will do some word meaning from this 4 stanza. That is, the first word is curfew. Curfew means evening bell. Toll, that means ring. Knell, that is the sound of bell reminding death. Parting day. Parting day means dying day, the end of the day. Wind, this is not the wind we think. This is the we think wind is breeze, but this wind is the follow the zigzag paths of mountain. Lee, that means grazing land where the cattle can graze. Mouldering heap, that means swelled part of grave. Then fade, that means decays. Glimmering, that means dimly seen, lightly, the light is dim, Solemn means serious. Droning, that means continuous buzzing sound. And then fold means enclosure for keeping sheep. Ivy mantle tower, that is tower covered with ivy plant. And moping, that means melancholy. Molest, that means attack. Ragged elm, that means old elm trees, that is one kind of tree, with rough trunks. Turf means short grass. Rood means rustic. Hamlet means small village. And next, this is I know for slide this is too huge, but I wish if I say something about Thomas Gray, you should know something more about Thomas Gray, because he wrote the Elegy, which is the well-known elegy of all the elegies. If you sort out 5 elegy for English literature, you can count his elegy in this list. So I wish you should know in detail. For that reason, I have sorted out the detail about Thomas Gray, his life. He born in Cornhill district of London in 1716. Gray was the son of Dorothy and Thomas Gray, a milliner, and Philip Gray, a scrivener. Gray's father was a mentally disturbed and violent man who at times abused his wife. Gray attended Eton School from 1725 until 1734. When he entered Cambridge University, he left Cambridge in 1738 without taking a degree, intending to study law in London. So he shifted to London. However, he and childhood friend Horace Walpole embarked on an extended tour of Europe. The two separated in Italy 1741 after a quarrel, and Gray continued his journey on his own. He returned to London later in this year, shortly before his father died. Gray then moved with his mother to Stoke Poges, Buckinghamshire, and began his most productive period of poetic composition. In 1742, Gray wrote his first major poem, Ode on the Spring, which he penned his close friend Richard West, unknowingly on the very day of West's death from the tuberculosis. In the next 3 months, Gray wrote Ode on a distant prospect of Eton College, Hymn to Adversity, and Sonnet on the death of Mr. Richard West, his friend. It is believed that he also worked on Elegy written in country churchyard during this time, though this poem was not published until 1751. Gray returned to Cambridge at the end of this time. Though this poem was not published until 1751, Gray returned to Cambridge at the end of the 1742 and received a Bachelor of Civil Law degree the next year. Gray lived at the university for most of the rest of his life, but he never took part in tutoring, lecturing, or other academic duties. Instead, he pursued his studies and writing, taking advantage of the intellectual stimulation of the setting. In 1757, Gray was offered the position of poet laureate, but he declined it. He moved to London in 1759 to study at the British Museum and remained there for 2 years. He read widely and earned a reputation as one of the most learned men in Europe. So, except for regular trips back to London and elsewhere in England, Gray stayed in Cambridge from 1761 until the end of his life. In 1768, Gray was named Regius Professor of Modern History at Cambridge, an office he held until his death in 1771. That's all about Thomas Gray. Then, historical background. Thomas Gray's Elegy written in country churchyard 1751, the most important and widely read example of elegiac poetry in 18th century English literature, is Gray's response to seeing a village churchyard near his mother's house in the small village of Stoke Poges in England. The pastoral scene inspired Gray's meditation on mortality and remembrance among the common people of English rural agricultural society. So, he chooses a topic for his poetry, or the theme of his poetry, for the common people, for the common man who died unknowingly, the agricultural society, the rural people. He did something for them in his writings, in his elegy. So, Gray ends his exploration on a personal note. Using the persona of an observer, an old villager, Gray describes himself from a distance and discloses how he hopes to be remembered by creating his own epitaph. So here, our Thomas Gray, by writing this elegy written in country churchyard, he is creating an epitaph also for himself. The poetry. Elegy written in country churchyard by Thomas Gray. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The lowing herd winds slowly over the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way, and leaves the world to darkness and to me. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight, and drowsy twinklings lull the distant folds, save that from yonder ivy mantled tower the moping owl does to the moon complain of such as wandering near her secret bower molest her ancient solitary reign. Beneath those rugged elms that yew trees shade, where heaps the turf in many a mouldering heap, each in his narrow cell forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. Line 1 to 4, the first stanza. In the first stanza, the speaker observes the signs of a country day drawing to close, a curfew bell ringing, a herd of cattle moving across the pasture, and a farm laborer returning home. He is creating the picture for the village people. The end of the day, the speaker is then left alone to contemplate the isolated rural scene. The first line of the poem sets a distinctly somber tone, serious tone or melancholic tone. The curfew bell does not simply ring, it knells, a term usually applied to bells rung at the date of the funeral. From the start, then Gray reminds us of human mortality. Here, mortality means we have to die. Human have to die. One day all of us we have to die. We are subject of death. For that reason, he is using this word nails. Then line 5 to 8, that means the second stanza sustains the somber tone. Somber means serious tone or melancholic tone of the first. The speaker is not mournful but pensive. Pensive means painful, as he describes the peaceful landscape that surrounds him. Even the air is characterized as having a solemn stillness. The line 212, the sound of an owl hooting intrudes upon the evening quiet. We are told that the owl complains. In this context, the word does not mean to whine or grumble, but to express sorrow. The owl's call then is suggestive of grief. Here, the owl, in Bangla we can say it a pacha. This owl's call or owl's calling is suggesting the tone of grief. Note that at no point in these three opening stanzas does Gray directly refer to death or funeral. Rather, he indirectly creates a funeral atmosphere by describing just a few mournful sounds. So, till these three stanza, we can realize the atmosphere which is creating by our Thomas Gray, that is mournful. He is trying to create a mournful tone, a pensive tone, a solemn tone for ourselves, because he is taking us for the grief for the dead people, death of the common people. So then next, line 30 to 16, it is the fourth stanza that the speaker directly draws our attention to the graves. Here in the fourth stanza we can find out the term graves in the country churchyard. We are presented with two potentially conflicting images of death. Line 14 describes the heaps of earth surrounding the graves. The soil. Here our poet is mentioning the soil that is on the grave. In order to dig a grave, the earth must necessarily be disrupted. Note that the syntax of this line is slightly confusing. We would accept this sentence to read, where the turf lives, not where lives the turf. Here Gray has inverted the word order. Just as the earth has been disrupted, the syntax imitates the way in which the earth has been disrupted. But by the same token, the rude forefathers buried beneath the earth seem entirely at peace. We are told that they are laid in cells, a term which reminds us of the quiet of monastery, and that they sleep. So finally, in the fourth stanza, we can find out the people, the common forefathers. Root forefathers, that means the forefathers, the village people who died, and we have to bury them in the cell, in the grave. Here the graveyard, he tried to explain us that is the graveyard or the upper portion of the grave is filled with turf leaves, and that creates one kind of dome like situation, where under these heaps our forefathers lie down in sleep. Their death is described here. Though he has created a mournful situation for us, before this, but here he tried to show us that our root forefathers buried beneath the earth seem entirely at peace. They are at peace. These common people are at peace in their grave. We are told that they are laid in cells. This cell is grave. This grave of graveyard, and a term which reminds us of the quiet of a monastery. I mean, in front of the monastery or the behind the monastery, we can find the graveyard, and where these common people sleep peacefully. So the first three stanza describes the atmosphere. I mean, the poet is trying to take us to a mournful, with mournful tone, solemn tone, where after that he has taken us to the graveyard, where our forefathers, the common people or the village people, who are laid down in their cells or in their grave, and they are laid down peacefully. So gradually our poet Thomas Gray, he is taking us to the main theme of this poetry. That is the common people whom we don't remember again after their death, but those people did something for us, for this earth, though we forget them, and that is our selfishness. So I wish we will do more in our next class. Next, at least we will finish at least 4 or 6 stanza in our next class, because dear my dear student, this is a big poetry. So though we have to finish it, we will finish, but I wish not too much quickly or not too much slowly. In a normal pace we have to finish, otherwise we can finish it if we try to explain the every line. So I will try to explain you the at least theme of the stanza or the summary of the stanza. By explaining this, we will finish. Thank you, my dear student. Assalamu alaikum.